morning, everyone. I think it's about time to get started. I'd like to introduce myself and thank you for joining our competition mindset and nutrition for football today. My name is Dan Wernickoff, and I'm the founder of Champion Athlete Sports Nutrition. I'm a certified sports nutritionist, and I've been working with athletes from the ages of 8 to 25 for about 10 years now, helping them perform better through better nutrition. Joining our webinar today from Winning Mindset is Chad Parks.
Yeah, hey there, I'm Chad Parks. I am a high school wrestling coach in Kansas. I work for Winning Mindset. I have a large football background. My dad coached football for over 30 years, so I grew up in the locker rooms watching film, and then was a football player myself. I also coached football for 13 years, and so this is a sport I have a lot of passion for. I'm excited to be able to work with you guys today and talk about how mindset translates into football.
Now, some of you may have joined us for the original presentation of this, which was back in April 23rd. Unfortunately, I had laryngitis that day, so we weren't able to do the nutrition point. So Chad spent the time talking about mindset. But today, we'll be able to do a balance. So Chad's going to go over mindset again, and then I'll be able to speak for a little bit on some football-specific nutrition advice. While we're presenting today, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, or you can text questions to my cell phone if for some reason you don't have access to the chat box. And my direct number is 845-641-3063. In some of our previous presentations, people have asked about recordings, and we do record all of our webinars, and they're available to download in the next few days from both the Winning Mindset page and also from Champion Athletes. Those usually take about 24 to 48 hours before they're available to download. Okay, we're going to start off this morning with mindset, and Chad is up.
All right, so let me get our screen changed here real quick. So this is what we call, in Winning Mindset, our company, this is what we call the training paradox. And, I work with individual athletes, I work with teams, and not only the ones I coach in person, but from all around the nation. I also present around the nation, and almost everywhere I go, I ask this question. I ask coaches, I ask athletes, I say, how much of your sport is mental? So for us in football, how much of football is mental? And almost overwhelmingly, people say 90% or more. All right. Now, here's the deal. There's probably a lot of truth to that. That's what I believe. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But how much do we actually practice the mental side, right? So for almost all programs, you have physical practice at least 90% or more. So we're going out there, we're doing conditioning, we're learning our technique for individual positions, we're learning our plays, going over offense, defense, special teams, all these things. And then maybe sprinkling in, and maybe it's even intentional or unintentional, but sprinkling in a little bit of mindset training, okay? But the paradox here is if we believe that our sport is at least 90% mental, because here's the thing, you could be a great athlete, but if you don't have your mental game right, you're probably not going to perform to the best of your ability. So if it's at least 90% mental, then why aren't we training more the mental side intentionally and just focus, and instead of just focusing on the physical side? So let me go down here real quick. These are what we call mindset red flags. And if these things pop up in your head or in the head of your athlete, so you might be an athlete that's on here, you might be a coach that's on here. These are what we would call red flags. These are areas that we want and need to address so that our individual players and our team can reach their max potential. All right, so number one is not aggressive or no killer instinct. All right, football is a physical sport. Football is a sport where you get to go out, and one of the things I always loved about it, is get to go out and hammer someone, right? You get to go out there, and there's a strategy to it, but ultimately, it's an aggressive sport. And so for me as a wrestler, football and wrestling, I think, they combine very well. They complement one another, and we want to make sure that we have that killer instinct. And if it's not there, how do we develop that in our athletes? All right. Maybe you have an athlete, or maybe you're this athlete. You're different in practice than you are in a game. So we've all seen those people that are sort of like practice heroes or practice superstars. And then we get out there in a game and they just don't perform to their ability. And the thing is, the ability's there. Now, I know one thing that I used to always hear my dad say, and he would talk about pressure. And he would say, you could take our football players and put them just out in the field and playing flag football, touch football, whatever, okay, when there's no real consequence. We're just playing a football game, having fun, and you will see the most amazing plays. You're going to see guys laying out, making one-handed catches, juking people out. Put that same player in a game, and they might miss a 10-yard pass that hit them right in the numbers. Okay, so are you different in practice than you are in the game? When there's no pressure versus when there is pressure, and how do we take care of that? That leads to choking in big games. Sometimes you get a great athlete, and they're just not good under the spotlight. Some other people shine under the spotlight. We want all of our athletes, all of our football players, to make sure that they are shining when they get out there underneath those Friday night lights or Saturday or whatever level that you're on. Okay, so we have high school and college on here. Giving opponents too much respect. We respect everybody. We want to make sure that we respect our opponents because they train just like we do. They want to win just like we do. But we don't give them too much respect. Sometimes there's a team who maybe they've won a lot in the past, or maybe they have a great record. And because of that, we tend to give them too much respect, which is essentially saying, like, hey, they've already won the game. All right. So if we're giving people too much respect ahead of time, that's not where we want to be. Difficulty bouncing back from mistakes. In football, you have to have a short memory. So if I'm a defender, let's say I'm a D-back, and I get burned, I have to have a short memory, because if I make that mistake and the next time I'm out there on defense, I'm still thinking about it, now it might be double, it may be a double mistake because of that. So I have to have a short memory. I have to have a quick recovery time and be able to bounce back from making mistakes. All your players do. So we can't let what happens one play affect the next play. And then people getting too nervous before or during a game. Nerves are a good thing. Nerves are a way of getting ready. The body's prepared. You can be faster, smarter, stronger. But if you're too nervous and if you don't know how to control it, it can freeze you up, and then you're not able to play at the best of your ability. So these are some red flags that we address with winning mindset. We address with individuals and with teams. Okay, so what is mindset training? This is a sport-specific, and it is a systematic program. All right, so mental skills. We're not sprinkling things in. This is a system. So whenever we are working with teams or athletes, we have a full curriculum. 50, 60 pages, depending on what the sport is, and we work with pretty much every sport you can think of. The people that do work with your teams in your sport have experience in your sport. So if I'm going to work with football teams, because I have experience in football teams, so we make sure we match up the best people from Winning Mindset for your program. But it is very systematic. We think of this as strength training for the mind. Okay, and I'll get to that more in the next slide. Now, we want it to be performance driven. So when we're playing football, we want to win. Winning is not everything. And so sometimes we're like, hey, this team's an awesome team because they win everything, or this team's not very good because they're not winning. Ultimately, I don't want to measure this on wins and losses, but performance does matter. We want your team to be able to win, but we also want them to play to the best of their ability. Okay, I think we've all coached games, or we've all played in games where maybe you lost, but you thought, you know what, we played really well. We kind of played exceptional. That team is just better than us tonight. We've all won games where we didn't perform, right? Maybe the other team just wasn't very good. But whenever we go in and watch film on Saturday morning, and we're looking back, or we're mentally reflecting on it, we realize that we did not play well. And if we're going to beat a higher level team, we're going to have to improve. So all of our mindset training, it is performance driven. We want people to maximize their potential. And again, not focusing so much on wins and losses, but actual performance. And if you perform really well, you're going to win more. What mindset training is not. It's not motivational speaking. I am a motivational speaker. I travel and speak. It's one of the things that I do, and I love it. But here's the problem. Sometimes when you have motivational speaking, it is just that, and people get excited in the moment, and then they never actually move to action. Okay? With Winning Mindset, with our football mindset program, we want to put you in action. So we want to make sure that whatever we're saying, is it going to be motivational? Probably, hopefully. But at the same time, there are real action steps that you can take with your players. When we have this system and we have these worksheets, these are things that your athletes are going to go through. They're going to complete. We have daily and we have weekly mindset steps and little programs that we want people to do each and every day, all throughout the week. They don't take long, but the entire time they're building up that mental strength. Okay, we're not therapy. We're not counseling. Maybe you have an athlete on your team who needs a little bit more help. Okay. And maybe there are some mental things in there. And as we work with athletes and talk with them, some things may come out. All right. But again, our job is not to be there as a therapist or a counselor. It is to focus on making them have the greatest mindset they can as a football player. All right. So our next slide. This is, and I mentioned this in the last slide, a strength training for the mind. This is how we view this. So in sport, you can never be too fast. You can never be too strong. You can never have too much technique. And in the sport of football, being fast is a huge advantage. Being strong is a great advantage. All right. I can tell you from the teams I've coached, I've coached undefeated teams. And, sometimes you're fortunate enough where, you're big, you're fast, you're strong, you're all the above. Sometimes your team's smaller, but they're fast. Okay. Sometimes they're big, but they're slow. Now, probably the toughest combination is being small and slow. That's just rough in football. All right. You got to do your best coaching when you get those teams coming in. All right. But in all those, we're strength training year round, right? So we're in the weight room. We're doing conditioning. During the summertime, hopefully everybody can right now in this COVID-19 time, we'll be able to go back and actually train with our athletes and our teams this summer. And it's so important. Your mindset training has to be the same way. This is something that should be done year round. This is something that we can do 12 months out of the year. It can happen and should happen all the time. We should think of our mindset training as equivalent to what we're trying to do in the weight room. If I get big, strong legs, but I'm mentally weak, I'm mentally fragile, go back to some of those red flag things, then my big muscles aren't going to do much out there, or my speed isn't going to be able to do much out there. Okay, so this is active training, giving you exercises, challenges, actual activities to do. Coaches, we often talk to you ahead of time, and we figure out what are the pillars of your program, what are the things that you want to get done in your football program. And then maybe, hey, here are some athletes that have this great potential and they're not reaching it. We even, as we're working with teams, we'll take some of those athletes and do some individual sessions with them. And again, we have activities that they're able to do. So things that we can do while we're we'll get on, we'll do a Zoom with your team or a FaceTime or however it is that we want to communicate. And then some things for you to, utilize and optimize as a coach every single day of the week with your athletes. All right. So different mental muscles. Often when we think about mindset training, people just think about being mentally tough, which is good. We got to be mentally tough. And I tell you what, whenever you're out there in the heat, practicing football or playing football, you got to be mentally tough. Okay. And then we get some of those nice fall days and, just the sport makes us be mentally tough. Then all of a sudden it gets cold and you're out there playing and everything hurts. Again, you got to be mentally tough. That matters. Right. But there's way more than that. So I'll go through some of these real quick. The 13 mental muscles. Okay. Self-knowledge. We want your athletes to get to know themselves. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are areas that they need to improve? And sometimes they know it, but they've never truly sat and thought about it or written it out. And we help them acknowledge some of these areas. Okay. Goal setting. We want to have real goal setting. We don't want this to be like a New Year's resolution. You write a New Year's resolution and 10 days later you forget about it, right? So we teach them how to set goals, how to remind themselves of those goals, prominent places, if they can place those goal sheets in the locker room, the workout bags, on their mirror at home, things like that. Mental toughness, again, coming back to that, it's just vital, but it's way more than mental toughness, okay? Motivation. What do you do when you're not motivated? How do you consistently keep yourself motivated? How do you reset the brain for motivation? Being in the present moment. We all know, maybe you're a high school coach. We all know that these kids start with us as freshmen, and the next thing you know, they're graduating. And, we try to tell them, even us as coaches, we try to make sure that we're always in the moment. We want our athletes to be in the present moment all the time and to value time, knowing that we can't get it back. Okay. Learning to relax under pressure. That is huge. Pressure is definitely put on us, and there's all different areas, of pressure. So how do we deal with it? We can't expect kids to do something or an athlete to do something whenever we haven't provided the tools. All right. We want them to be confident. Confidence is huge. Have clarity, have aggressiveness. All right. And then beyond those things, leadership skills. We want your football players to become leaders on your team, on the field, in the classroom, in the school. Maybe you're a college coach. I guarantee you, if your athletes are leaders in the school system, high school and college coaches, teachers are going to love them. Administrators are going to love them. It makes your program so valuable. Okay. Then the community loves them. So we want them to be leaders, to have team building skills, and then injury recovery. I'm working with an athlete right now. Just was on the phone with him earlier. He's an MMA fighter, and he's got an injury right now. We're going through recovery. Of course, that's really mental, but it's a big part of it. And we want your athletes to get through the physical therapy part, but we want to deal with the mental part so that they can focus on the things they can do, not what they can't do, and then they come back ready to roll. All right. And then the mental side of sleep, we talk about that, and a lot of that's going to tie in with what Dan will discuss with nutrition. Okay. So a few of the programs that we work with, and there's just a couple. I mean, we have Division I, Division II, high school. We have programs all around the nation, east to west coast, that we work with. And then before I turn it over to Dan, I want to do, this is what we call like one of our pillar lessons or programs for our winning mindset. Okay. So when you talk to your football players, I know this is a swimming photo, but it is a great example. Predator versus prey mindset. All right. And if we look here, you see Michael Phelps, of course, multi-time Olympic champion. He's out in the front, and then his competitors across from him, you know, what do they say? Winners focus on winners, or champions focus on champions, and losers focus on champions, or losers focus on winners. Okay. This other guy is not focused on his own race. He's focused on what Michael Phelps is doing. Michael Phelps is focused on one objective, and that's winning this race and doing his job. So predator versus prey. We like to say this: eyes in front like to hunt, eyes on the side like to hide. And if you think about predator animals, I live in Kansas. Lions, tigers, bears, oh my. Those are all predator animals. Their eyes are in the front. Okay. Prey animals, their eyes are on the side. So when a tiger wakes up in the morning, it's not worried about everything else around it or what anybody thinks about it. It has one objective. It's going to go and get some food for its family and itself. A prey animal is, you know, waking up and literally worried about 100 things. First off, can I survive the day? And that's why its eyes are on the side, so they can see all around it, because it's got to focus on others. We want your football team focusing on their job, what they're supposed to do. Okay, so predator versus prey mindset. Real quick, we like to think about it this way. Prey is your biggest foe, F-O-E. All right, the F stands for fan mindset. So I love football, and I'm from Oklahoma originally. I'm a diehard OU fan, and so I'm watching OU every Saturday play football. On Sunday evenings, I'll jump on and I'll look at the new rankings that come out, and then I'll look at the team that OU is going to play, and I'm going to go back in my mind and I'm going to research that team, and I'll see who do they play, do we have any common opponents. Essentially, I'm trying to figure out who's going to win next Saturday, which is out of my control, so it's silly, but I'm a fan, right? That's great for fans to do. That's not great for the players and coaches to do, because those things are outside of their control. So as an athlete, as a coach, as a program, we want to focus on the controllables and then forget about the other things. We don't want to have fan mentality. We don't care what the other team's record is, what they did in the state tournament last year, any of those things that are in the past. All right. So if they made it to the state finals or won the state championship and we're about to play them, guess what? It's a new year, new teams. They got to come prove themselves. So our job is to walk into, just like the OU football players, right? Their job is not to worry about the rankings. It's to walk in on Monday and have the best practice they can have and become the best player they can be, and really know the game plan and develop their specific techniques for their position. All right. If you're a defensive end, you better know your techniques and know what coach wants you to do. If you're the quarterback, you better know what everybody on the offense is supposed to do. So you're focused on your objective. That's predator mindset. Fan mentality, that's a prey mindset. Okay. The O is for others. Just like these prey animals, they're worried about other people all the time. We don't want our athletes worried about outside opinions. Well, here's what the newspaper said. All right. And sometimes when we're worried about others, it's not others in a negative way. It's people that we love. Sometimes our athletes, they're worried about mom, dad, coaches, peers. They don't want to let others down. And that's okay, right? Because those people love them and they love those people and they want to perform the best for them. What happens, though, is when we worry about others, and if you're an athlete on here, sometimes we worry about others so much that we no longer go out and compete to win. We compete not to get beat. And that's a really bad place to play from, okay? We want to go out and play wide open. We want to go out and play to win every single time and know that those people that really matter, they're still going to love us, win or lose. So we're not worried about others and other people's opinions. We're worried about going out and, again, controlling the controllables and doing our job. All right, so that's the F, fan mentality. The O is others. And then the E is extras. And these things are not inherently bad. So when we include these in predator versus prey mindset, extras might be something like playing a video game. not inherently bad, right? I guess depending on the video game. But if you're up till 1 o'clock in the morning playing video games, that is bad. Now that has impeded, or it's become a roadblock to becoming the best football player you can be, because you're not getting the sleep that you need. You're not getting the recovery that you need. So sometimes extras, maybe it's a girlfriend, whatever. There are multiple things that aren't not inherently bad, but if taken out of context, or if they don't align with our goals and values, those extras can get in the way. So we want to have an objective, and we want to become the best person and best player we can be, and focus on that objective and go after it, right? Predator versus prey. So some common thought patterns that kind of go along with this real quick, and this is a lesson we do with our athletes, with your team. We want the athletes to, focus on what they do in best games. And sometimes they don't know until we actually go through these things or they write them down, versus what they do in the worst games. That way we can replicate. We can always go out and do the things that create our best games, right? So as an athlete, I want to work on my game plan. I want to do my job. I want to be consistent and focus on the things I can control, versus working on our opponent's game plan, okay, what they might do to me. It's nice to know if I'm an O lineman and I've been able to watch some film, the moves of some of the defender that may be trying to get past me. But for the most part, I need to know what my blocking assignments are. I need to go out and do my job. So it's okay to know what the other team is going to do a little bit, but we need to make sure that we're 100% focused on what our job is, okay? So that's what we do in our best games. We treat all opponents the same. It doesn't matter if it's a local team in your town that doesn't have a good record and you guys always whoop up on them, or if it's one of the best teams in the state. You want your athletes and your team to walk out and treat everybody the same, and know that we've prepared as well as we can. We're confident we're going to go out and we're going to play to win. We're going to go out and try to perform at the absolute best of our ability every single time. Okay, so that's what we mean. We're saying treating all opponents the same, versus over or underestimating an opponent. If we're doing our best, we don't care what their record is. We don't care what their background was. We're going to go out and try to perform really well. All right. We want to have consistent intensity, and football can be a super intense sport. We don't want to be really intense one practice and less intense in next practice. We want to make sure that we're always up mentally and we're ready to go. Okay. There are no special games, and this comes back to treating all opponents the same. If you're playing the opening game of the season, or you're playing in the state championship, will the hype be a little bit different? Yeah, the hype's going to be a little bit different. But as an athlete, I can't create any special games in my head, because then I can undervalue something, I can overvalue something. I've played in I've competed in a national championship in wrestling. I've played in big football games. I've been on some of the bigger stages in sports, and I've performed well at times and not at other times. You need to make sure that as an athlete and as coaches, we're preparing our athletes to go out and to perform at the top of their ability, no matter what the situation is. So like I said, it could be your opener, it could be a mid-game or mid-season game, or it could be playing for a state or national championship. Doesn't matter. We want to go out. A football field is the same. We're looking at 100 yards, 50 yards wide, so football field is the same. We're going to go out and play the same and consistent in our best, no matter what field we're on, anywhere in the state or anywhere in the U.S. Okay, anywhere in the world, really, I guess. All right. Thinking about I have nothing to lose versus the significance of this game. I don't care who's in front of me. I'm going to dominate. All right. That's something we always want to do. I'm going to go back up and do one more here real quick. I'm going to make them tired or take as hard or impose my will, versus what if I get tired or injured. Okay. I don't want as an athlete to ever think about getting tired. And there's a true confidence that comes with working your tail off and getting in great shape. Because then you go out and you can play hard every single play. You're never going to let your team down. We all know that if you take one play off, you may mess everything up on offense or on defense, and somebody might score on us, or we don't score, or one of our teammates gets lit up because we didn't do our job. So we want to make sure that we're in great shape. And we're literally going out thinking, I'm going to break this guy across from me. He's going to try to guard me this game, or he's going to try to get past me, or he's blocking me this game. I'm going to break him mentally. And once I do, then I'm going to take him physically. I'm going to be able to impose my will on this person. When your entire team thinks that way, you become a very dangerous team, right? You become a team that's a force to be reckoned with. So this is one of the lessons that we go over. Predator versus prey mindset, knowing what our common thought patterns are to be able to help your athletes perform their best every single time. So, and again, if you have any questions, make sure that you put those in the chat box. We'll answer those along the way or come back and answer those at the end. So now I'm going to turn it over for our nutrition piece with Dan.
Thanks, Chad. That was great.
Sure.
All right, everybody. We're going to talk about sports nutrition, specifically for football, for the next few minutes. And I think the athlete food pyramid is a great way to kind of put food into perspective. So we're going to spend a little time talking about macronutrients, things like proteins, carbs, and fats, how to know how much protein, how much carbohydrates, and how much fat should be in your diet. We're going to talk a little bit about nutrition timing, when to eat certain foods at certain times to get the most bang for your buck. Because we know that if we eat carbs at a certain time, they're to our advantage. If we eat proteins at a certain time, it's to our advantage. And if we eat them at the wrong times, we're just not going to get the results that we're looking for. We'll talk a little bit and briefly about supplements. Supplements, there's probably 10 or 20,000 supplements on the market, and trying to pick the right supplements for the right person. Sports food kind of is a relatively new food group, probably started about 15 years ago. And those are sport-specific foods, things like proteins, protein bars, things like that. And finally, we'll spend a few minutes talking about micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, fiber, all those other parts of our diet that are so important to make sure that things are functioning properly. As I'm going through, feel free to type any questions in the chat box, and I'll either answer them as we're going along or at the end. So let's start off talking about proteins. We all know that protein's an important part of our diet for building muscle and repair. But I'm always asked how much protein should be in my diet. And the reality is it depends on what your goals are at the time. And we're going to talk about nutrition periodization and nutrition timing in just a couple minutes. But I need you to start thinking about that your diet changes based on what your goals are. If you're in a muscle building phase, you're going to want to be on a higher protein diet. If you're at a phase where you need your speed to be more important, then your protein is going to be a little lower and your carbohydrates should be a little bit higher. So manipulating your macronutrients is going to affect your performance. And that can be both within your entire diet. It can also be specifically around certain times of your diet as well. Remember that proteins come from both plant and animal sources. And if you're not having enough protein in your diet, you can suffer from things like anemia, which means your body's not carrying enough oxygen. You have low red blood cell counts, fatigue. You're more susceptible to injuries and stress fractures. And if you're still growing, it can impair your growth. Carbohydrates are our essential energy source for our bodies. And as a general rule, the less processed a carbohydrate is, the longer the sustained energy. So we always tell people to try to pick carbohydrates that are darker in color, more brown. The carbohydrates that are whiter are the higher in sugar, purified sugar, high fructose, things like that. And they're not going to give you that sustained energy that we're looking for. Our main source of energy. And again, 20 to 70% of our diet could be carbohydrates. Depends on the training phase that you're in and what your goals are. Glucose molecules are stored in the liver and converted for fuel. So we need to make sure that we have enough carbohydrates in our diet so that we can let that happen. You don't want to be eating all protein for a week before you have a major game. You want to have that good balance and start increasing your carbohydrates as you get closer to game time, so you have that stored in your liver ready to go. They're important as well for muscle gain. And then fats. Fats are an essential part of our diet for sustained energy. During rigorous exercise, there comes a point where your heart and lungs don't keep up with the work that your body's doing, and you switch into anaerobic metabolism. And when you do that, your body depends on stored fat in the muscles to keep feeding them. So fat's essential for sustained energy, providing proper digestion. If there's not enough fat in your diet, you can have constipation and other digestive problems. And fat is the basis for our major hormones production. So testosterone and estrogen are both fat-based molecules. So if you don't have enough fat in your diet, you may not be producing the hormones your body needs. In general, 10 to 40% of our diet can be from fat, and depending on where the protein is really determines where our fats are. So generally, when your diet's higher in protein, your fat content's going to be higher. When your protein's lower, your fat content can be lower. Remember that fats are sourced both from animals, fruits like avocados, and beans, nuts, and seeds. Now, technically, this isn't a vitamin, it's not a mineral, and it's not a macronutrient, but I don't think there's anything more important than making sure you're drinking enough water. And being hydrated is super important both for practicing and for competing. And it's important to be always drinking enough water. Trying to drink right before a competition, trying to drink right in the middle of a game isn't going to be sufficient. The goal is to go into any practice, into any competition, super hydrated so your muscles and your body can work as efficiently as possible. Drinking water helps energize your muscles. It improves your skin, so you're less likely to have breakdowns in your skin. It helps with mental concentration. The most common cause of headaches in school-age children and teenagers is dehydration. So drinking more water is the first thing we recommend for people that are suffering from headaches. They help keep your kidneys functioning properly, and especially if you're considering to use supplements like creatine and things like that, being super hydrated is very important to make sure that none of the supplements cause any problems with your body. And being well hydrated helps you maintain normal bowel function. There's nothing worse than going into a game, going into a practice, being constipated, being bloated and uncomfortable, or having diarrhea. So by drinking the right amount of water, it's going to keep your bowel function working optimally. Now, when we talk about micronutrients, there's all kinds of micronutrients that your body has. This is just a little chart, and it gives you some information about what the different reasons for micronutrients are. And any good meal plan is going to make sure that you're hitting the micronutrients. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially in football, are something that should be considered by everybody. Omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to have a concussion protective effect. So anytime I work with an athlete that either plays in a sport with a high risk of concussion, has a history of concussions, we make sure that they're on an omega-3 fatty acid supplement to help protect against the possibility of concussions. Now, you're not going to eliminate concussions by taking an omega-3 fatty acids, but research has shown that it will reduce the symptoms and it will also reduce recovery time. Another area which I mentioned earlier is anemia, and low iron content is the major cause of anemia. Now, food sources of iron I'll go over in just a minute, but a lot of them are from protein sources and red meat. But the early signs of anemia can be feeling more short of breath than you normally do. Your endurance just isn't as good. You're starting to feel weak unexpectedly. Your lifts were going up and up and up, and all of a sudden you notice your lifts just aren't progressing or have stopped progressing. You also generally feel more fatigued and tired than you did before. Some iron-rich foods to consider are all these listed here. And we always make sure when we create a meal plan that we have a good balance of iron-rich foods in your diet. Now, I think of all competitive athletes as their sports are of a marathon and not a sprint. Sort of what Chad was talking about earlier, that it's an all year long situation. And I believe it's the same thing for a sport like football. But with football, there's a time when you want to peak. So you want your competition peak, that's in season. You want to make sure that you're doing all the right things to make sure you continue to grow and mature. If being a college football player, being a professional football player is important to you, then making sure you're getting all the right nutrients so that you reach your full height potential, that you grow and mature properly is very important. So we use the term nutrition periodization to talk about how we separate and change your nutrition plan based on the part of the season you're in. Now, right now, most of my football players that I work with are kind of in the off-season period. And during this off-season, we spend a lot of time working on getting bigger, gaining muscle, getting stronger. Most of my clients are on a higher protein diet right now. They're on a lower carbohydrate diet, so they're gaining healthy, lean muscle rather than gaining excess body fat. As we move into the preseason, and for nutrition terms, we consider the preseason, depending on when your season starts, end of July, beginning of August. And during that time, you're starting to have practices. Maybe you'll start off by having, no equipment practices. Then you'll go to just pads, and then you'll go to full uniforms. So in that preseason time, we're going to be transitioning from that higher protein diet to a more balanced diet. So our ratios might switch at this time to like 40% protein, 40% carbohydrates, where during the off season, we might have been like at 60% protein and 30% carbohydrates or something like that. And then we'll switch into the in-season period, and this would be your prime competition season. And during that time, our diets will switch again. So during that time, 48 hours leading up towards the games will be a much higher carbohydrate load. So we'll load our clients with carbohydrates leading up to competition. But then on recovery days, which will usually be if you play on Friday night or Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, something like that, those would be high protein days. So what we do in those cases is we have high protein days, and then we have low protein days, high carbohydrate days. The high protein days allow for muscle repair and good repair of the body. The high carbohydrate days are going to allow for great energy when you're playing your games. So where do you start? If you want to start to make changes to your nutrition, you need to start with a body composition analysis. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I have some allergies, so I need to take a little sip of my water here. A body composition analysis is going to break your body down for you and let you know what the major components are. So the components of a body composition analysis are your weight, but more specifically, what is your body fat percentage and what is your muscle mass? Because weight by itself doesn't tell us very much. What does tell us is what your body fat percentage is, and your muscle mass tells us really what numbers we want to work on changing. If your body fat's too low, it's going to be difficult for you to gain muscle, and it's also going to be difficult for you to have sustained energy. If your body fat's too high, you're going to be carrying around excess weight, and it's going to be slowing you down. Also, your hydration. Are you hydrated at the right level? Do we need to focus on increasing your hydration? And finally, your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. Basal metabolic rate means if you laid in bed for 24 hours, did absolutely nothing, how many calories your body needs to maintain your current weight. We take that number and we add a number for daily living, like going to school or hanging out with your friends right now, working from home. And then we add numbers for all your physical activity. So if you're doing cardio 3 days a week for an hour, we'll add 3 hours for that. And then we'll multiply by a factor for cardio. Then we'll add numbers if you're doing lifting. If you're lifting for an hour a day, we add that with a number for exertion. We total that up and we get a grand total. Everybody's number is different. Let's just say your number is 2,000. Once you know that number, you can decide how you want to manipulate that. If you want to gain muscle, but keep your weight the same, you want to have less carbohydrates and more protein. And keep your calories right at that number. If you want to gain weight, you're going to need more calories. And if you want to lose weight, you're going to need less calories. So the goals are to manipulate your body fat percentage, your muscle mass, and improve your energy and endurance. So we change our diet, like I said, by manipulating your calories, by manipulating the macronutrients, making sure you have all the micronutrients in your diet your body needs, making sure you're drinking and hydrating properly, and timing those nutrients so you get the most results from what you eat. And that's why I think everybody needs a nutrition plan, because a nutrition plan makes things predictable. By planning out your food, knowing your calories, your proteins, your carbs, and your fats, you're able to meet your performance objectives and build a plan that's going to help you reach your goals. Your weight and your nutrition becomes very predictable in a good meal plan. So if you follow that plan, you're going to have the results you're looking for. It's going to make sure that you're getting the macronutrients you need in your diet as well as the micronutrients. It's going to ensure that you're hydrating at the right times and in the right volume. And by following a meal plan, it's going to reduce stress and anxiety, because a lot of people spend a lot of energy on thinking about what should I eat, how much should I eat, when should I eat. And a meal plan takes all that guesswork out for you. It's laid out for you. You can prep your food in advance. You can make sure you have all the groceries you need and don't have to stress about eating or when to eat. It's one of the things you can control. And as Chad said, we want to control the things we can control all the time. Now, leading up to competition, I think one of the most important things that you need to do is have a good hydration strategy. So hydration strategy means how much should I be drinking 24 hours before? How much should I be drinking the morning of a game? And how should I be getting that hydration? So everybody's familiar with a lot of these things with water, Pedialyte, Gatorade. A lot of teams make big, those big orange Gatorade containers of these things available to their athletes. Some less known things may be the Right Stuff and Liquid IV. These are super hydration powders that you add either to water or to Gatorade or to Pedialyte, and they increase the amount of minerals in them, so you're hydrating much better. If you're an athlete that suffers from muscle cramps or fatigue, especially during games, you're a high volume sweater, so you sweat much more relatively than some of your teammates, you may want to consider using one of these supplements. And finally, what should I eat kind of right before the game or leading up to the game? Now, I know a lot of teams do big team meals prior to football games, and that's fine the night before or early in the morning if you're not playing till later in the afternoon. But when you're getting really close to the game, you still want to fuel yourself, but you want to make good choices. Things that are going to be easy on your stomach, easy to digest, but give you good energy throughout the game. So we like a liquid protein drink. The core powers are great because they're convenient, easy to take with you. The thing is that sometimes these kind of milky products don't go great with everybody's digestion. So you'd want to try these before a competition. So you'd want to try them like in practice, see how you feel, and then decide if you want to have it before a game. Triminio is a protein water, so it's a good alternative. If milk-based products kind of bother your stomach, Triminio is more like a fruit juice or a fruit punch. It does contain protein as well, so it's a way of getting protein before competition as well as some carbohydrates in a liquid form, but not milk-based, so it may be easier on your stomach. A peanut butter and honey sandwich is a great way to get some good energy either during the game or right before the game, and you can never go wrong with picking good fruits as a source of energy as well. So at Champion Athletes, we help our clients to do the pieces that I spoke about. We begin with that body composition analysis and assessment, and then we create a plan for them to help them reach their goals with their body composition. Some we work with to gain weight, some we work with to lose weight, some are just trying to gain muscle but maintain their weight the same. We coach our clients through the hurdles, so we help them stay on track and make sure they're getting the results we want. And then we do periodic reassessments to make sure we keep progressing their plan and their goals. All right, let's open this up to questions for both Chad and myself. Feel free to type questions in the chat box or text questions to me if you don't have access to the chat box at 845-641-3063. And we do have a question already, and that's from Tim. He says, is there such a thing as drinking too much water? Our trainer in college would say that often, but I didn't understand. It is possible to drink too much water, and that's more of like a body weight question. And the concern by drinking too much water is that you can dilute your minerals and electrolytes in your body. So there are athletes that I work with who drink an exorbitant amount of water. I had a client who was drinking 3 gallons of water a day. And by doing that, he was flushing the minerals and the electrolytes out of his body and causing muscle cramps because he lost some of his vital nutrients. You also do see that sometimes in runners, people who do marathons, because they're drinking so much water, but they're not having the right minerals to go along with that water. As a general rule, though, it's pretty hard to drink too much water. Another question from Zach. Oh, I'm sorry. Kevin was next. Can you go back to the hydration page where those mineral supplements to add? Sure. I'll leave that up there so anybody can look at it if they want. Okay, Zach has the next question. Some parents started a spaghetti feed after school on game day. I was wondering what you advise. Not sure if the best, but don't want to dampen the enthusiasm. What should we do instead? So Zach, if you can just answer a question for me, is how long was that spaghetti dinner before your game? You know, some people think about like a carb coma, which is where you have a large amount of carbohydrates and then your body needs time to digest them. So it can actually lower your energy. So if you have several hours, like 4 hours from the time you eat the spaghetti until the game, that's probably fine. If the time is less, you may want to consider mediating some of those carbs with some lean protein, like maybe having like some grilled chicken with the pasta, something like that. So Zach said about 4 hours. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with the spaghetti dinner. I would probably say you can mediate, excuse me. You can probably mediate some of that carb coma effect by also having some source of protein with it. So if you maybe did some grilled chicken with it or something like that, also considered some fruit with high fiber fruit to go with it, because fiber helps mediate some of the carbohydrate effect, you're fine. And I wouldn't damper your team's enthusiasm either. So think about it this way: have the spaghetti dinner 4 hours before, and then maybe an hour before the game, have the guys have like a peanut butter and jelly and some fruit to give them really good energy during the game itself. Would 6 hours of sleep be substantial for recovery time? So Chad, why don't you give your opinion on that first, and then I'll go ahead and give mine.
Yeah, so it depends on the person, right? Different people need different amounts of sleep. I actually think right now, being in this COVID time that we're in, is a good test, depending on when you got to get up. But let's say that you don't have to get up early for anything, okay? So for a few days, you go to bed at whatever time you're going to bed. Let's say you go to bed at midnight, and don't set your alarm. You wake up when you wake up, and maybe you wake up at 8:30 or 9. It's probably going to give you a good indication of how much sleep your body needs naturally. Okay. Now, in saying all that, typically we are looking at way more sleep than 6. I mean, 8 to 10 hours, especially if we're talking high school or college athletes, and when their bodies are. So, like me as a coach, like sometimes I could get away, and I think optimal for me is like 7 to 8 hours of sleep, just through kind of testing throughout the years. But as an adult, maybe a little bit less, for some people. But man, for high school kids and college kids who are still growing, still going through puberty and exerting a lot of energy and calories, mental and physical, all day in school and then practices, weightlifting, all these things, right? So sleep is one of the most essential recovery tools that we have. So I would look to up at 6 hours to somewhere between 8 and 10, depending on the person. And again, we want to make sure that we're recovered really well. So then the next day we can still perform at a high level, and sleep is just vital to that. So Dan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Chad 100%. In fact, just to give you a little information, there was a Midwestern Division I college team. I don't know if it was Oklahoma, so I don't want to misquote somebody, who actually did a sleep study on all their athletes last season. And what they did is they were charting their time that they go to bed and the time that they awake. And then they were getting coached when to go to bed and when to wake up. And they were ensuring that all their athletes had 8 to 9 hours of sleep per day as a minimum. And they found as soon as they controlled that, and athletes were going to bed and waking up in that 8 to 9 hour window, that their performance in practices went up substantially. So it's a real interesting article. I'll try to find it and make it available on my website. But there's no question that we're still learning about sleep, and that you want to try to be on the more side of sleep rather on the less side of sleep whenever you can. Any other questions that Chad or I can answer for anyone? Looks like we have another question coming in, so we'll hang on for another minute. Zach asked, are fish oil pills recommended for omega-3s? I mean, I think it's both things. I don't generally say that supplements are the be-all, end-all. The first thing would be is to try to have good sources of omega-3 fatty acids in your diet. So those can come from healthy nuts and fattier fishes like salmon, things like that. So I would try to make sure you're having a few meals of those things per day. And then I would also add an omega supplement to it. So I would get it from both sources. All right, everyone. Well, if there are no further questions, we're going to close it up here. But I'd like to thank everyone for participating in our presentation. And like I said, it will be available to download on both the Winning Mindset and on the Champion Athletes website in about 48 hours. So thank you very much for attending today. Chad, any further comments?
No, I thank you everyone for jumping on. Hopefully we were able to give you some actionable information. And, you know, again, if you're interested in either one of these, there are many follow-up things that you can do so that we can be in position to help your teams or you as an athlete.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you very much.